Hey everyone, in today's video I'll be showing you how to produce The Way That We Love by Martin Garrix and Justin Milo. So this is one of the unreleased songs Martin Garrix has been playing in his latest shows. I think it's a really cool song that features some amazing melodies and sounds. So without any further ado, let's dive into the production. Now, as you can see, I've organized the project file based on the different sound categories. We have drums, some fills and loops, a couple of effects, the layers that make up the lead sound, some supporting layers for chords, and finally some bass layers. So let's begin with the kick, which was once sampled from a song by Dirty South, and it has been in my kick sample folder for almost a decade, I think. And without any processing, it sounds like this. So that sounds pretty nice, but I wanted it to sound a bit more powerful and tight, which is why I'm using this glue compressor for some extra punch. Then I'm also using this drum shaper for extra tightness. And on top of that, I'm automating the kick's volume level so that its tail becomes slightly shorter, which in turn provides the other elements, and especially the bass layers, with some more space. Then we're using a couple of cymbals like this ride, a simple hi-hat loop, and this cymbal loop, which all add some energy and groove to the drop. But the drum elements that I think contribute most to the drop's groove are the clap and the tom. So I'll play you the drop without these elements and then with these drums enabled. So you'll be able to hear the difference these very simple drums can make in terms of rhythm and groove. We then have these clap fills and this short reverse cymbal to kind of make the drop a little more interesting, as well as these two fills that aim to improve the transitions between the different parts. And then there's this hat or tambourine loop that comes in after 8 bars to add some extra energy and groove. Now, speaking of energy, very important in these types of drops are the downlifters and impacts, as these can really add a lot of power. And alongside power, we also want to achieve a certain emotion, for which we're using these ambience or atmosphere pads, which already sound pretty nice if we solo them, but they really make the drop feel more emotional and fuller, as they kind of fill up some of that remaining space. Now, moving on to the leads, we're using 2 sounds made in Silent 1, which together form our main lead sound, and I'll make sure to include these presets in the zip file that you can download for free in the description below. So the first lead consists of 4 saw oscillators, 3 of which have 4 voices, while 1 has 8, and this one also has quite a bit of detuning to make it feel a bit more anthemic, but not too much, because that's where our second lead comes in. And this one also has 4 saw oscillators, all having 8 voices, but as you can see, I turned up the detune knob quite a bit for most of them, which makes this one a really cool layer to our first lead, in the sense that it makes the overall lead sound a lot bigger. And to make it complement the initial lead even more, we're also using this stereo shaper to push it to the sides a little bit, which creates a really wide and full lead sound, because our initial lead was more centered. Then we're using some simple presets from Serum to support our main lead. And finally, I wanted the lead to sound a little more organic, which is why I added 2 electric guitars, one of which comes from the Ilya Efimov library in Contact, while the other is from my beloved Electric Sunburst library. So I've exported both of them to audio in order to save some CPU. And in terms of processing, I mainly wanted the Ilya Efimov guitar to sound a bit brighter, for which I'm using OTT and Decapitator, while I wanted the other guitar to sound a lot fatter, which is why I'm using this free plugin called Camel Crusher. And then I wanted to make sure that the boost caused by this Camel Crusher plugin does not create or amplify any frequencies that might hurt the ears of the listener, which is why I'm using Soothe to get rid of these unpleasant frequencies. Now I've routed all of these lead layers to a lead bus using the route to this track only option, and here I'm applying a sound goodizer to kind of glue all these lead sounds together. Once again, an instance of Soothe to make sure that some of these harsh frequencies in the high mids and high frequency ranges are mitigated. And then I needed quite a lot of reverb, for which I'm using this send channel. So how does this work? Well, we sidechain our lead bus to a new track. Then we open a Fruity Send where we select this new track as our send to. And now we're basically duplicating the audio signal from our lead bus. So what we're going to do is add a reverb that is 100% wet to our duplicate channel. We remove some of the reverb's lows and harsh highs, and then we can adjust the channel's volume fader to decide how much reverb we actually want to hear. And to make sure that our reverb does not interfere with our dry lead sound, we're applying some sidechaining, as we would in, for example, a kick-bass relationship, for which I'm using Fruity Limiter. So inside this plugin, we choose the compressor tool and the lead bus as our sidechain trigger, and then we adjust the threshold, knee, and release knobs until our reverb ducks in a nice way every time we hear the dry lead signal. And this just makes things a little cleaner in terms of mixing. Then we get to the instrument section that delivers most of the song's emotion. So we got a bright piano from Keyscape, an electric guitar from Electric Sunburst, some strings from Session Strings Pro 2 for an even more acoustic and emotional vibe, 2 saw layers from Silent One, which I'll also include in the download pack in the description below. And finally there is this plucky ARP sound that only starts playing after 8 bars, which adds a little bit of extra emotion and rhythm by playing these 16th notes. And in terms of mixing, I'm again routing all of these sounds to a bus channel where I'm applying some compression to really glue all these elements together, and some EQ, specifically this preset called Mix General Purpose Balancing 2, which just adds some extra clarity and presence to these supporting layers. Next, let's take a look at the bass sounds, again made in Silent One and included in the zip file below. And I think what's most important here is that I'm automating each sound's pitch bend in order to improve the transitions between different notes, and this just makes the entire drop flow better and even adds some more energy as the drop becomes less static. So in terms of mixing, there's not that much going on. It's mainly some EQ on the first 2 layers in order to make sure that they don't clash with the sub bass. And on that sub, I'm using R-bass to add some extra bass harmonics and an EQ to cut off anything above like 80 Hz, because I don't want it to clash with the lows and the low mids from our previous bass layers. And as we're currently in the mixer anyways, let's also take a brief look at the master, which does not really contain anything special. There's this SSL compressor by Waves to basically glue everything together. A DJ amp filter that's basically only applied right before the drop through this automation clip to make sure that the fill does not contain too much low end. There's an EQ to make the highs slightly less harsh and to create a very subtle boost at around 200 Hz. And finally, my beloved invisible limiter to simply get a couple of extra dB, and that's it. Make sure to download the free zip file including the FLP, the stems, the MIDI files and the Silent One presets down below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment, and if you want to see more content like this in the future, please consider subscribing to the channel and clicking that bell icon to ensure you never miss a beat. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.